it is very exciting, a very exciting time to be a member of law enforcement or in the policing profession, because so much has changed over the decades, and all for the better. So I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Joyce now to talk specifically about the strategies that we've been using and how effective they've been so far. But it's an ongoing struggle, it's an ongoing battle, and the one thing we can never do is become complacent, think we have the situation in hand, because the minute we do this, we'll start to lose. We have to be very, very aggressive. We have to constantly look for new ways, new ideas, and really take advantage of the resources that we have at our fingertips, because it's the only way we're going to have a long-term lasting impact on our cities and keeping our cities safe and secure. So with that, let me ask Nola to please come up and talk specifically about some of the things we're doing, and then we'll be more than happy to answer any questions any of you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. And this is how it works. He has the vision, and I get it, help get it done, you know, with my colleagues that are sitting out here. So back in probably 2006, 7, into 8, I came to probably not a unique realization, but a realization that policing was entering into an era that was going to be driven by science and technology. And I think that's true as we sit here in 2014. And so when the commissioner asked me to join him here in Philadelphia, one of the things I did was to step back and reflect on my experiences in Chicago and in DC. And one of my major regrets in both of those cities was realizing that when I left, some of the work stopped. Now that happens, right? And to expect different may not be all that wise. But I also realized the reason that happened is because I did the majority of the work. And so I learned. And now I tell people I don't believe in lessons learned. I believe in lessons taught. The next opportunity decides whether or not you've learned it. So I think and I hope that here in Philadelphia that I learned the lesson and I am applying it. And so what I want to talk to you about is what we've been doing here in Philadelphia around increasing the analytical capacity of this police department. Because for me, that is the crux of a modern day 21st century police department. 2009, actually, it was probably 2008, so Commissioner Ramsey and I came here in 2008. We had graduated a group of recruits. And Commissioner, as you heard, grew up going out on foot beat. So he decided that these new recruits are going to spend at least their first 3-6 months out on foot. Well, at the time, Deputy Bethel was what we call a regional commander, also a deputy. And he wasn't too keen about the idea of putting these new young gung-ho guys and girls out on the street walking a beat. So after the fact, he came up to me and he says, do you think Dr. Ratcliffe could come in and take a look and tell us whether or not these foot beats made a difference? So I said, well, reach out and find out. So gave him a call. Jerry came in, took a look at the data, again, this is after the fact, and told us what he found. And then he said, you know, if you decide to do this again, call me before you do it, and I can probably help you set up a method of design in order to really test the question you just asked me. Fair enough. Next graduating class, next year, 250 new recruits ready to go. Commissioner says they're going on foot beats. Kevin came up to me and said, well, you think Dr. Ratcliffe would take another look at the foot beats? I said, I think he probably will, but why don't you reach out to him and give him a phone call? Because he said, talk to him before we do it, and he could help us set up something. So that connection and that conversation started. And what we did with Jerry's help and Liz's help was to set up an experimental design in which there were, again, 250 people. They were assigned to 60 foot patrols in the city. Jerry and his staff identified a total of 120 high violent intersections. The commanders, district commanders, looked at footbeats around those intersections. And then they were matched. The two highest violent intersections, and then one was randomly picked for foot patrol. The other one was a control. And so it was worked down. So what that meant for us is that we knew 60 of the most violent intersections in Philadelphia was not going to get foot patrol. Now, some people stepped back and said, wasn't that pretty risky? I mean, wasn't that pretty risky doing that? Well, we were actually at a smart policing conference, and I knew that Deputy Bethel was drinking the Kool-Aid when that very question was asked. And before I could stand up, Bethel stood up and said, well, we couldn't put them there anyway. We don't have enough people. And so when you think about using randomized control experiments in policing, especially around place-based policing, that is usually the right answer. That's usually the answer. You don't have enough resources to cover them all anyway. So you're going to pick and choose. Then in 2010, the Philadelphia Police Department and Temple University received a BJA Smart Policing Grant. We were one of the first 5 jurisdictions in the country to get that grant. This time what we did was, okay, we know that hotspot policing works by the research. But still out there was the question of what happens in those hotspots. What do the cops really do? So we attempted to answer the question, what strategy works best in hotspots in Philadelphia? And so we tested problem solving, offender focused, that's identifying the high-risk offenders, and we tested foot patrol again. Once again, it was a randomized experiment. There were 20 sites for each of those strategies and 20 control sites. So this time around, we found that the offender-focused strategy was the most effective. And there was a 22% reduction in violent crime and a 31% reduction in property crime in the hotspots which used offender-focused tactics. Problem solving and foot patrols, we didn't see that significant reduction. And one thing we learned was implementation, and again, this is one of these lessons that are often taught but never learned, that implementation matters. How you implement the program, how it's done on the street, makes a difference. Problem solving was something new to Philadelphia. We did a lot of training, we provided support and technical assistance, but for those who have worked in the area of problem solving and problem-oriented policing, you know it takes a lot of time to do that work right and to get it accepted. So I think the problem with problem solving was we weren't ready to test it. Our people weren't trained well enough, they didn't buy into it totally, and they didn't know how to do it completely. The other thing we learned, and this was with foot patrol, is as the commissioner said, dosage matters. So why did we find a significant reduction with the first experiment, but not with the second? 2 primary differences. The Great Recession happened, and we didn't have rookies. We had to go with veteran officers. Some of them volunteered, and some of them were volunteered to walk a beat. All right? There is a difference, for those who've been in policing, between a veteran officer and a rookie officer. And in fact, the data shows that the veteran officer did not do as high level of enforcement, the activity, as the rookies did. The second primary difference was dosage. The first time around, there were 2 teams of 2 for each beat. So they had a total of 16 hours out on the beat. 2 teams walked 8, a team of 2 walked another 8. The second time, it was only an 8-hour dosage. And we did not get the results that we got the first time. So we've learned what makes a difference. We also learned that the temptation to make the foot beat larger has a detrimental effect on its impact. And so you still hear that conversation in crime briefings with Deputy Bethel and Deputy Ross about commanders wanting to make their foot beat just a little bit bigger. You know, that little dot down there, can I go get that dot? And the remark is, no, because we learned you get it bigger, you lose its impact, you stay where you're at. So that was the second grant. That was the first grant, I'm sorry, the Smart Policing. Then we were invited to submit an application for a second. This time around, when Jerry and I talked about, well, what do you think we should do? We both agreed that one-time studies are important and useful. They're useful to us, and they're useful to the researchers. But what's really going to make a difference in Philadelphia is that we have that capacity in turn. And so we began to talk about a program that will allow Temple University to teach our people how to do some crime analysis and crime science. We began with 5 officers out of 4 districts, and they're sitting over here, and these are their posters. If you have a minute afterwards, go look at them. This is the kind of work that they were taught to do in a relatively short time. There was some classroom work by Jerry and Liz and the PhD students, and some technical assistance provided out there in the field. And the first 4, and I told Jerry, I know about success when after the first 4 get out there and people begin to understand and see the work that they're doing, and I have captains knocking on my door going, how do I get one of those? I don't know what that is, but I want one because it looks like it's making a difference. Well, that's what happened. And in fact, just this last month, we did the last round of training. So every one of our 21 police districts now have an analyst coordinator. And so they received the training, and these 4 people will soon receive their official certificate because they've completed a major project that Dr. Radcliffe and Roth has said, yep, that shows you know what you're doing. So you get a certificate. But here's what's important to me. And that is when people begin inside a police organization to not only understand and accept, but demand research, data analysis for making decisions and assessing how good those decisions are. And that's what is happening today in Philadelphia. I keep picking on Deputy Bethel because he's the poster child. But Deputy Bethel challenges his commanders to prove to him with data, what they are doing, why they are doing it, and how effective they are doing it. And so during our crime briefs, we don't call them ComStats because we've changed them a little. We changed them a lot. We call them crime briefs. And during our crime briefs, sometimes the analysis coordinator would show up and do a presentation. Our Deputy Bethel would task analysis coordinator to do a particular type of analysis because he sees a problem happening through their chain of command. In fact, today at the crime brief, Dr. Radcliffe was sitting in the audience, and Deputy Bethel turns around and says, Jerry, what's going on with that analysis out there in district whatever? And Jerry looked like a deer in the headlights. And he, just like in every ComStat meeting, he responds back, but it's becoming part of the organization when an external researcher is challenged in a crime briefing. And he feels required to respond. That's a qualitative difference between what was going on in 2008 in Philadelphia Police Department and what's going on today. And that change, I believe, and I think the commissioner and others sitting here would also say, although we cannot prove it by your standards, we think That's the kind of effort and work that has driven down the crime here in Philadelphia over the past 6 years to, as you've heard, the lowest levels since 1960, early 70s. It has just been really amazing to see it happen. And so here in Philadelphia, we call that smart policing. And that stands for us, strategic mapping and analysis for resource deployment and tactics. And that's what we do every 2 weeks in a crime briefing. And that's why the policing strategy for Philadelphia policing is data-driven. And I hope we'll continue that way for many years. Appreciate it.